Right, let's dive into our top focus in this broadcast. Thousands of protesters are expected to take to the streets of Tel Aviv as initial reports say that the Knesset will hold a vote on one of the most controversial bills of the proposed judicial overhaul. But why does this bill matter? Well, this bill proposes to strip the Supreme Court of its power to strike down those government decisions which it deems as unsustainable in law. Now, one of its potential effects would be on the appointment of ministers. The Prime Minister has watered down the bill and is now looking forward to get them passed in the Parliament. The changes include terminating the clause which allow the government to override the Supreme Court's decisions and also to modify the way in which judges will be appointed. And that's crucial here. Now, protesters will hold demonstrations, marches, convoys and disruptions throughout the country as of now. A number of major employers and academic institutions announced on Sunday that they would enable their workers or students to join these protests. This also includes the big shopping centre, the Agman law firm, as well as the Reichman and Haifa universities. One protest leader said that a mass protest is to begin outside the Ben Gurion airport, and also additional demonstrations and marches are to continue this evening. And to give us more updates of what's happening on ground, we are now being joined by our correspondent Jody Cohen live from Dronana. Jody, welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, Priyanka.
Right, Jody, you've been covering these protests for a while now. What can you tell us about what is expected today in Israel's parliament voting on the reasonableness of this bill?
Right, so Monday afternoon local time, Parliament is expected to discuss the first reading of this bill. Now, this is about whether or not judges can judge something based on whether or not they consider something to be reasonable as opposed to lawful. Now, the coalition and their supporters say that the unelected judges have too much power over the elected officials, and they say that the opposition agreed about amending the reasonableness clause in the talks. But the head of the opposition, Yair Lapid, he's denied this, and Benny Gantz, who, remember, in the latest polls show would beat Prime Minister Netanyahu if there was an election held today. He's against what he calls the salami strategy of cutting up the original judicial overhaul bill. And he says that things should be passed together. There is some consensus that amendments need to be made, but there's concern with the current bill that by cancelling the reasonableness entirely, reforms would remove the checks on government power. And as you can see behind me, protesters are starting to gather at the home of influential MPs like Danny Danon, where I am now, in a bid to try and pressure those MPs to vote against the bill.
Right, Judy, in fact, we can hear the ongoing protest right behind you. That's ongoing as of now. Before I go into my next question, I want to ask you, do the protesters on ground actually understand this bill that they're protesting? Do they understand this reasonable clause that's making headlines as of now?
I think it's a don't understand the bill. Other people who are against this bill would say that yes, they have read the bill. It really depends on a personal matter how far into the details they have gone. But in terms of what's likely to happen next, the vote is expected to pass today. Then on Tuesday, the Justice Committee is expected to begin preparations for the second and third readings in Parliament. And a day of disruption has been planned for Tuesday, starting as early as 7 o'clock in the morning. They're planning to block the roads, block the airport, protest outside the US consulate. And as you said, in a new development, we've got private companies starting to get involved, such as the big chain of malls across the country.
So given your reading of the situation on ground, what can be expected if this bill actually passes in the first reading?
So we're definitely going to see a big day of protests tomorrow. They're talking about it as being the largest protest Israel will have ever seen, saying that if the bill passes, then Israel will come to a stop. Police are expected to bolster their forces. Prime Minister Netanyahu on Sunday said that people have the right to demonstrate, but not to disrupt the lives of others. He called on the Attorney General, Baharav Miara, to explain the police handling of the demonstrations. And the Attorney General suggested that is in line with the judgment of policing experts. But some ministers have reportedly called for her resignation. Meanwhile, the government wants to pass this bill by recess at the end of July. On Wednesday, the Parliament will vote again on the remaining seat on the Judicial Selection Committee. And in the winter session, the coalition is expected to return to the issue of political influence over judicial appointments. And meanwhile, President Herzog and now Benny Gantz are calling for a return to the talks, which of course have been frozen.
Right, Jody, thank you so much for all those live updates. We'll continue to track this story and come back to you for more. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.